Bitterness is like you're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. There is something wrong about patriarchy. Culturally, you were raised to believe that you are the head of the family.
Welcome to Visionaries Lounge. As always, it's a great big pleasure to have you with us. Speaking on behalf of the voiceless, the marginalized, or the destitute is no easy feat, but it's a challenge that my guest this evening has gladly accepted. Mbuyiselo Botha is a gender equality activist and he's with us tonight. Dr. Botha, it's always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You know, we always see you on television or we hear you in the radio and you're speaking on behalf of women and you are lambasting abusive men, etc. But we hardly ever get to know Mbuyiselo ke mang. So Dr. Botha, take us right back to the beginning. Where were you born and raised? Well,
I was born in Sharpeville in the Val Triangle. Sharpeville is about an hour from Johannesburg. Raised by a single mom. My mom, Latiwe Elizabeth Botha. I've never known my father. Very strong, powerful woman. We were 7 at home. And I'm left now with my only younger sister, Musa, who's still in Sharpeville. So I do the work that I do for the last 20-odd years to contribute to this woman, Latiwe. When in Sharpeville, I used to call her affectionately Somkulu. A very strong woman when Ayanda, who was poor, illiterate, but we never went to bed without eating. She used to do what we call mbamba, the so-called African illicit
like a chibuku.
Yeah, chibuku.
It was illegal at the time.
Yeah, it was illegal. I mean, yes. She should be arrested. In and out of jail, should be arrested out at a very early age. I would have to go and negotiate that she comes out. But what was very very peculiar about this woman was that we would never go home or would never go to bed hungry.
I'm seeing a strong female in your life, your mom, very tenacious, as I can hear, it's a tenacity there evident. But the absent father, are those two factors heavy contributors to who you are today? Yes,
and I think you're spot on. I always say that Usomkulu, my mom, I think when I look back, I do this work because of the impact she has had on me. I mean, I can imagine, and by the way, there are millions of women in South Africa who are raising boys like me, who are raising girls single-handedly. So I think my mom has had a great impact in my life. But again, not knowing my father has also made me to be conscious that it's important for us as men, as fathers, to really be in the lives of our children. And then by being in the lives of our children, I don't mean only materially, because that's not what children need. So, and I look back, Ayanda, and always say, but there are certain things in my life, I ask myself, if he had been there, what would have happened? Probably my life would have taken a different course, where I am now in my life. I've always wished that I would not want my kids to go through the same way where I went through. That I make it a point that I'm in their lives. And then I may not succeed because all of us are made of clay, feet of clay, absolutely. Yes. But I think I attempt to do the best.
One thing that I'm sensing now is that during your upbringing, clearly surrounded by a lot of pain, a lot of loss as well, as we've just heard, mom in and out of prison because she's trying to provide for you guys, siblings passing away, father not being there. You took that pain and perhaps even anger, sometimes resentment, and channeled it towards activism. Speak to me about you and your role in the liberation struggle.
Well, I think I was part of the Sharpeville Civic Association. When you see my limb, the paralysis, I got shot by police in the head in 1986. The bullet went through, got lodged here. Suddenly, police came from that side of the street. Then there was lots and lots of shooting. And I then was joined the crowd in this place, just to find out exactly what had happened. Were people injured here, people needing some medical assistance, but only to find that I then became part and parcel of the scene or the incident, in that I remember someone shouting, they had shot Mbuyiselo. 84, Val erupted. Yeah. and the whole of South Africa, I mean, erupted as well. 84, 85, 86, and I got shot 86, 15th of September. I mean, we thought in the 80s that, in fact, apartheid was on its knees. And that's the period, I think, when I look back, that made me to make a connection that, the connection between that the rights are not indivisible. You can't say there are hierarchy of rights, that when women, who I look at my mom, struggling, and black woman, illiterate, look at, the poverty-stricken, situation she was in. And when I then began to say, but how do we then talk of, liberation, when in fact the majority of the citizens of this country who are women are not liberated, mainly because of, the triple oppression, because of inequality both at home, in the workplace, in our society. And that connection was important to make. In the same way that white South Africans who would not talk of them being liberated for as long as the majority of citizens in this country and red black were in bondage.
So the political had to become personal.
Absolutely.
So talk to me about you as a young man. You're in your 20s, you've just gotten shot. What is it about what you needed to do kept on saying to you, you must continue? Because one would think at that point, you're limping, you had a near-death experience, you had to retreat. I would have thought that someone would just go back and shrink back and say, they are not for me.
Yeah.
What was it about your mandate and your calling in life that said to you, press on?
It was realizing that, there were people who had done the bigger sacrifices. That I have always looked at myself and said, but in the bigger scheme of things, yours is minute compared to what South Africans have gone through in this country.
Even the ultimate price of
absolute death, and others were in exile, and liberation movement fighters. And they've always inspired me. I looked at them, our leaders. In all the liberation movements, I looked at them and said, but if they can, sacrifice, and as you rightly point out, they gave the ultimate sacrifice. Some of them paid with their lives, and some sacrificed families, when, families were destroyed, and I looked at myself and said, but look, I can't afford to be bitter. Because, when someone said something to me, I think I regard it as very profound. This person said, bitterness is like you're drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Yeah. That's what bitterness does. Yeah. But I've always said, but what also bitterness does, you become its slave. You become beholden to it. That's what hatred does, bitterness, unforgiveness. And when you let all of those things to go, you then begin to see the bigger picture, that as a country, there are lots of things that we must do. And you can't, in your own space, then sit there and say, hey, I'm disabled now, and look for sympathy, look for shame, when in fact the country needs you, and say, we are called upon to serve.
You know what, I can tell that you're extremely passionate about this, because we're even getting ahead of ourselves when it comes to this. I want to talk more about your service to the country and that bigger picture that you alluded to in just a moment. So do you stay with us when we come back? The work of Baba Mbuyiselo Botha. Stay with us. Welcome back, and thanks again for joining us. Human rights and gender activist Mbuyiselo Botha joins us this evening. You spoke to us a little bit earlier about your work in Sharpeville in the 1980s. Let's speak a bit more about your activism now and how it took you to the International Red Cross, and that's before we go into Sonke Gender Justice.
Well, the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is based in Geneva, we're looking for people in the 80s, people who do community work in the various provinces in our country. And, I was recruited to work at the Red Cross as one of the committee mobilizers then, we called ourselves. And it was also at the height of, the turmoil in our country, that Red Cross was at the center of doing work to ensure that there is accountability, that apartheid police, their brutality was not visited on different communities. The Red Cross has this stature of being a peacemaker, ensuring that there is no excessive force used by police. So that was my involvement with the Red Cross, setting up different branches throughout the country. Yeah.
When I opened the show, I said how difficult it is to be a voice for the voiceless, because it means that people have to give you an unofficial mandate. People have to buy into your vision, and people have to say, yeah, that guy can speak for us or on behalf of us because he knows our issues. That guy is not patronizing in the way in which he speaks on behalf of men or women. How is it easy or difficult for you to put yourself in a position where you can say, I can speak confidently and authoritatively on behalf of APC or against APC?
Well, it's difficult, Yanda, because I always make a correction that I don't think that I can articulate and speak on behalf of women. I think for me is, but also I can't speak on behalf of men. I challenge men and boys, I challenge myself, but I also think that I am not qualified to say I can, and I think a word of caution, no man who does gender work should actually say that I can speak for women, I can speak on behalf of women. What I can do and what I've been able to do the last 20 odd years has always been to say that there is something wrong about patriarchy, and there's something wrong about misogynism. There's something wrong when I think that because she's a woman, there is something inherently inferior about her. So I've always made the distinction that you can't really, and all of us as men who do this work, we must always be cautioned that it is a work that we need to humble ourselves. That's why I always say the women's leadership, especially black women, because black women should always understand that, and black men, that they are our allies, because black women in particular are people who I should listen to, who tell me their pain and who tell me their struggles every day. And the issue of humility is that when the temptation would be as men to even take the leadership role in the gender struggle. We should never, we must caution men, black men, white men, that we can't be seen to speak on behalf of, because doing so would either be, as you rightly pointed out, would be either patronizing or even condescending.
Yes.
It's like saying, I know what is good for you.
Yes, what is good for you.
Absolutely. That's why even, I mean, in the present South Africa, I mean, white South Africans should always have, you know, a spirit of understanding that they must take a moment and reflect and listen to what black people are going through every day. Because the temptation is to say that we're 21 years into our democracy. Get over it,
yes.
Move on.
We're still a young democracy. We're still a developing democracy. I think we've got a lot of the basics in terms of constitution, Bill of Rights, constitutional institutions correct. The key issues that we face as a democracy, however, are, I think, dangerously high levels of inequality, poverty, unemployment, and you know, I think for me those are the greatest issues that we have to address and the greatest threats to our democracy.
Do you clash with religious authorities and traditionalists who say we know the role of a woman as far as the Bible is concerned, or the Quran, or whichever religious text from which they quote, or for example, we know traditionally that this is the role of a woman, etc., etc. Do you ever butt heads with fundamentalists in that way?
Oh, we do, because I mean, and major religions in the world, the role of women is that of them being subjugated, oppressed, and I've been in spaces in major religions. Because in most religions, when the teachings have always been that women should know their place.
They're less than.
Yeah, they're less than. Their place is the othering. Their place is that better when they serve. When they are not supposed to be in leadership. I mean, if you look at all the so-called even progressive Christians, Muslims, what is very peculiar about them is that, or common about them is that the woman's role is that of them serving men's interest. But the traditional leaders is that one of the work that I do is working for the Commission for Gender Equality, and we work closely, but also with Sonke, we work closely with traditional leaders. And I've always found when you bring it back home to them that A lot of our traditional leaders, who are men, by the way, have got daughters, have got boys. But when you say to them, who do you want your boy? Who do you want your girl to go through this? Then it hits home.
It changes.
Absolutely
things
changes.
change then.
I've heard lots of them saying, but no, not with my girl.
Yes.
Not with my
then
daughter.
with whose girl? With whose girl?
That's when you go in.
What we do at Sonke or dealing with men mainly is training men on what it means to be a man, training men on issues of HIV/AIDS, issues of inequality. Are we born violent as men, or is violence part of our genetic makeup? All of those things, we begin to look at them and look at culture. What has culture done to us as men? So we try in our workshops to try and look at how then we challenge certain stereotypes.
But, you know, the issue of women abuse, I think, is multifaceted, because one could then say it's as a result of patriarchy. But then one school of thought would say only hurt people hurt people. So, for example, if you have a wounded man who has been disenfranchised because of the history of our country, or because of where we are at the moment with women earning more, etc., that they feel not masculine enough, etc., then they abuse. These issues that feed into abuse, what are they?
I think you're right. One of the things you have mentioned them is, I think it's a sense of where you think that as a man, I'm losing power. I've heard most people blaming the present government, unjustifiably so, unfairly so, that because of women's empowerment, there's men's disempowerment. When in fact, evidence speaks to the contrary, that it is still us in the main who are in leadership position. But Ayanda, to come back to your question, I think where a lot of men would feel that, you know, I'm no more in charge, I'm no more in control. Sometimes it's just a perception that because she's earning much, when I benefit when she earns much, because she's earning much, she's now dominant, she's in control. You know, the fear of the unknown. So there's also something that especially black men are dealing with, and it must be difficult. Unemployment. I mean, imagine, Ayanda, where culturally you are raised to believe that you are the head of the family.
You must provide.
Absolutely. You must provide, protect. And suddenly you find yourself, you don't have an employment. Now, the sense, the void that, where's my role? Because society has put us in a box.
Further research has also shown that actually 5 out of 6 men are not abusive. They actually are very supportive to their partners. They are trying to cultivate equal relations in relationships. But those men are silent.
Society has said to us, you are not a real man when you don't do this. There's what I call social scripting. That the script is that you must, as a man, you must do the following. As a woman, you must do the following. And if you are the man, you don't do these things that is expected of you, society punishes you, or men punishes you.
Okay, so in all of this work that you've done, I want to find out in just a moment what your most defining moment is, where you see yourself in the next 10 years, and more importantly as well, how it translates to your personal life. All that and more in just a moment. Welcome back. Thank you once again for joining us. My guest this evening is activist Mbuyiselo Botha with well over 30 years experience in fighting the good fight of influencing the social fabric of South Africa and healing the collective psyche of our people. You and I were joking a little bit earlier, and you say your children say, Daddy, you must get a real job. You must get a real job, Daddy.
Well, men do things, men are lawyers, are architects, you know, quantity survey. What is gender activism? But normally it's do something better, man. Be a real man, I mean, and who does that often? I mean, Latiwe is better, my son Rapakisa is better, but Bonganjalo does that with, hey, you know, whenever I challenge him, he says, when everything's gender, hey, Papa, get a life, man.
Get a life, Papa.
Get a life.
Yes.
I mean, when she grew up, one day we're traveling, there was a woman was driving a car, but she was still young then, and she said, hey, you know, it still looks and sounds weird when one drive. I said, Nana, what are you talking about? I said, oh, Papa, wait, man. It's not about gender. Equality. These are real things. But she has grown up to be she's one of the students that she's studying for social work at the University of the Witwatersrand.
You see, she's the one who's most like you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Sibonganjalo one day did an amazing thing. I came back from work, tired as I was, and I asked Sonke, who's my wife, that Sonke, could you assist me to wash my socks?
And I said, it's not fair. She is from work and you also from work. Don't you think she's tired? So I think you should wash them yourself. And he actually did.
But it can't be easy. How do you earn a living doing what you do?
Well, I do, like I said, I have been privileged to do part-time work for Sonke, and I was appointed by the president last year, 2014, to be in the Commission for Gender Equality. So I do work for Commission for Gender Equality part-time as a part-time commissioner, but I also do work at Sonke as a part-time media and relations manager. Yeah.
But when you are a father figure or a voice of reason for so many people, sometimes you're great out there, but not so much at home. How has your work impacted your family life?
Well, it has been difficult. I've gone through difficult in my own marriage, difficulties, and so it has not been easy, on that front. Things have not worked well. It has not been an easy, and it continues to be a struggle for me. And I was saying to you, certain things happen to the best of us, where things don't work out well as we have, intended them to be. So it has not been easy, but for me, it has said that maybe these are lessons in life that all of us have got to go through them. Yeah.
What does the next frontier of the next chapter have in store for you?
Well, I think I'm in another phase in the gender struggle, working now with, like I said, with the Commission for Gender Equality. And I was saying to someone preparing to come here that has opened certain things, that avenues that I have not been exposed to before. Working as an NGO, moving to a Chapter 9 has been a great challenge. I've met individuals at the Commission for Gender Equality who are amazing. I mean, led by our chairperson, amazing man. I have also, in the 9 provinces, you find the commission where I've gone through amazing, dedicated staff members in all of those provinces. But also at Sonke, I work with young people. I think that we have a duty, we have a responsibility, people like us who have done this gender work, to pass the baton, because this is the next generation of gender activists. These young men I've spoken to, that I've said to them that when some of us move beyond, you guys need to take the baton and run with it. Yeah.
Indeed. And I know that there's a lot of emphasis in your life on your children as well. I'm hearing you speaking about these young people that you're working with. So I get the sense that you're very much about the next generation as well. You were joking with me saying that whenever you shout at them and you get cross with them, I don't know, the bullet that was lodged in your head, it's moving now. It's moving around. Bullet
I thought you would not mention it. I think that the guilty one is Mbuyiselo.
Yes.
Whenever we clash, you should say, but remember, by the way, you still have a bullet in your head.
That explains the insanity that you're saying to me.
Well, Latiwe does that. The person who doesn't is the elder one. Rapakisa, he doesn't do it. He does it in his own way. So, and these have been, they've also been a source of inspiration. My daughters, my son, they've always been a source of inspiration, and I sometimes say probably I live now for them,
We've come to the end of this discussion. I've thoroughly loved it. I've seen your wicked sense of humor as well, that you try to hide undercover. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with us, and we wish you everything of the best.
Well, thank you, man.
And thank you, of course, for joining us for this last half hour, and we'll do it all over again next week. Good night. God bless.
I hope wherever you are listening to this show, you're able to serve each other. There's a young man, a young boy out there who's crying for you to serve. I went through many traumas in my life, but one thing I've never had is to harbor bitterness or unforgiveness, because bitterness and unforgiveness consumes the bearer. So as South Africans, let's go out there and serve humanity. Good night. I hope you serve South Africa.